So we finish up with chapter 10. Looking at chapter 10.9. We're dealing with coordinate planes. We're going to talk about area, we're going to talk about height, we're going to talk about size of shapes, and how to put them on a coordinate plane. So a quick review of coordinate planes and how they work. Once again, we always start with our X, our first letter in an ordered pair. If it's positive from my point of origin, I go forward. If it's negative from my point of origin, then I'm going to go backwards. So X positive forward, X backwards if it's negative. My second one then always tells me to jump, which is my Y, which is in the middle going up and down. So if it's positive, then I jump up. If it's negative, then I jump down. So my ordered pair is always running before I jump, my X followed by my Y. Also a quick review, even though we don't get into it in this lesson, is that it's called a quadrant because it's divided into 4 different sections. So I know my quadrant 1 is always going to be an ordered pair of positive, positive. My quadrant 2 is always going to be an ordered pair of negative, positive. My quadrant 3 is always going to be an ordered pair of negative, negative. And my quadrant 4 is always going to be an ordered pair of positive, negative. So when we get into the situation that we're talking about on this first scenario, where it says the world's largest book is a collection of photographs from the Asian nation of Bhutan. A book collector models the rectangular shape, so we know we're dealing with a rectangle, of the open book on a coordinate plane. Each unit of the coordinate plane represents 1 foot. So once again, we have units in the coordinate plane, but now they're telling us that it actually has another unit to measurement, which is feet. The book collector plots the vertices of the rectangle. Vertices are points. So if you think of the word vertices, it makes a V. The point on the V tells you that we're talking about the points on a shape. And then it gives us point A, B, C, and D, and it asks what the dimensions are. So dimensions are length and width anytime we're talking about dimensions. Now, a couple lessons ago, we had a couple people confused by the question that said the word by, showing different measurements. By just means the same thing as multiplication also when we're talking about different types of things. So up here I put an image of a 2x4. It's called a 2x4 because if I look at the end of the board, it is a rectangle. And I have a measurement of 2 inches by 4 inches. So if I wanted to know what the area of the face of the end of the board is, it's a rectangle, I would go 2x4 or 2 times 4, and I would know it would be 8 square inches. So by, don't let it confuse you, it just means the dimensions or the length and the width, the things that I'm measuring. Plotted A and B for us. I've inserted these numbers just so you can see that we are counting line by line, even though they only show the evens as they're counting. It would be the same going up. But when I look at what I have, then I know I have a rectangle. It says that we're going to plot the different coordinates, and we have C, which is 2, 8, and we have D, which is 9, 8. Notice I'm only dealing with quadrant 1 on this set, so I don't have any negatives going on here. So when I plot C, then I would go straight forward 2, and then I would go up to the 8 and put my point. And then when I plot D, I would go straight forward 9 since it's positive, and then I would go up 8 since it's positive as well. So when I make my shape then, I see that from B to A to D, B to C, C to D, I indeed do have a rectangle. It says the Y coordinates are the same, so the points lie on a what? Well, when I look at A and B, and I see that my Y's are 3's, well, if I plot it and make a connection, I see that they make a straight line. So if we want to know what that length is, then what it's saying is from 0 to 9. It doesn't matter if it would be positive or negative, but what is its value? It's showing the absolute value. So I know the absolute value for A is just going to be 9. My absolute value for B would be 2 because it goes up to the 2. And then it asks, well, what is the length of that board then? Well, if I'm going from 9 back to 2, I want to know the distance between the two. It's just basic subtraction. You could also count them so that you know it was 7. It would work the same way. And then it looks, well, what about the side or the height for line segment BC, notice that the x's are the same. And if the x's are the same, then I also know that they're going to be on a straight line. So the straight line then, what is the difference between them from 3 to 8? Well, the absolute value from 0 to 8, it tells me it's worth 8. The absolute value from 0 to 3 tells me that it has a value of 3. So if I just know I'm going from 8 to 3, then once again, it's simple subtraction. 8 minus 3 is going to be 5. Or, if I just once again count my units going up, I see there are 5 units, and I wouldn't have to figure out what the absolute values are. But when I want to know what the length of it is, then I know, if I want to know what the dimensions of it are, then I'm going to talk about my base, which is 7, by, or times, the height, which is 5. So the measurements of it are simple 7 by 5, or 7 to 5. So when I go to this example then, it says find the unknown vertex. Once again, a vertex starts with a V. The point of the V tells me I'm talking about the points of a shape. 3 vertices of a parallelogram, P, Q, R, S, are here. So I have P, Q, R. I'm looking for S. Give the coordinates of the vertex S and graph the parallelogram. So the first thing I have to do is start graphing the points they give me. I have P, which is positive 4, positive 2. So I have to go forward 2, 4, and up 2. And then Q is positive 3, negative 3. So I have to go forward 3, negative, down 3. And then for R, it's negative 3, negative 3. So I have to go backwards 3 and down 3. Have to put those in the right position in order to be able to draw or figure out what the coordinates are for my missing vertex or my missing point. Once I have that, then I'm going to go ahead and draw the 3 lines that I have for that parallelogram. By drawing it, I'm going to be able to see what the other information is that I'm missing. If it's a parallelogram, then I know that the top line has to be parallel with my bottom line. It goes straight across. So from this point, I know my top line has to go straight across. And then my other side also has to be parallel. So I have to make sure that when I draw it, I stay the same distance from the right-hand side. The other way I can figure it out is if I know that my base is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units, then my top one has to be 6 units also, because if it's going to be parallel, I have to have opposite sides that are parallel and of the same length. So if that is 6, and I go to the top, and I count back 6, then I know that my point's going to be right there. It's a lot easier to do that than trying to judge drawing something to make sure it's parallel or not. But if I know that that's where it's going to be, then we're going to say that it's 2, 2. Now the rest of this page, mine's not there, it'll be there in just a second, is going to let us prove that it is negative 2, positive 2, that it's going to be right there where we just figured out. So we're going to work through it. We're trying to find S. They tell us that this is the P, the Q, the R. We know it has to be parallel with the top. Well, this information is going to take us through to prove that our hypothesis negative 2, positive 2 is indeed the correct point. The opposite sides of a parallelogram are what? They're parallel, right? Okay, so they have to also have the same length. Well, if that's true, then since the length of the side, line segment RQ, which is here, RQ, is 6 units, and I know that because I'm just going to count them, and there are 6. Then the length of the top side of side PS, or SP, must be 6. Alright, so that should make sense. So then it says, start at point P and move horizontally. Well, which way am I going to go? If I go to the P and I start going to the right, I go off my board. For you might go off your paper, and we don't have any space on our coordinate plane anyway. It's also going to be an extremely long, elongated parallelogram, and it's not going to be the right one that we want. So I'm going to go to the left. I'm going to go 6 units to the left because I know it has to be the same measurement as this one up here as this one down here. So I'm going to go horizontally 6 units to the left to find the location of the remaining vertex or point for S. Plot a point at this location. So when I move 6 to the left from P, I end up here. And when I plot that point then for S, I can see that I do indeed make a parallelogram for my shape. It says to draw that parallelogram and check that opposite sides are parallel and congruent. So the coordinates of this vertex of S should be what? So if I know this is 6 and this is 6, and they both go along an x-axis, I know that I'm good there. So on this one then, I just need to check the height of both of them to make sure I have the same height. They look parallel, but we're going to prove it. So when I go to the base and then I go to the top, I have 5 units. So when I go over to the other side and go from this vertex or point here, from the base to the top, I also have 5 units. So if I have 5 and 5, I know they are the same height, so I know indeed that I've done it correctly. So what are the coordinates of that point? I'm going backwards 2, so it's -2, up 2, positive 2, so I know that my hypothesis was correct. When I run backwards and then I jump up, I'm going to have an ordered pair of -2, positive 2. Now on this one it says the vertices of a triangle. So we're going to have 3 sides on this shape. They are at these points A, B, and C. First it says to graph the triangle and find the lengths of the side for line segment BC. So I got to graph the triangle first. When I graph the triangle then, I look at my first point for A. It says -1, positive 3. So I know I'm going to run backwards and then I'm going to jump up. So I run backwards 1 and jump up 3, and I'm going to plot A in my book. Make sure you label it so you know which points they're talking about, by the way. My horizontal distance of B, well, I'm not ready for that, am I? Because I don't have a B yet. So once again, we're going to finish up graphing our triangle before we move forward. Please don't skip anything because everything goes step by step mathematically. So now I go to B. B tells me it's a -4, -2, so that's this quadrant 3 because it's negative. So I know I'm going to run backwards 4, and then I'm going to jump down 2. So when I plot it, I put my point and I label it B. And now it's a triangle, so I have 3. I need to plot 1 more. My C is a +2, -2. So I know I'm going to run forward, and then I'm going to jump down again. So running forward and jumping down, I put my point C. Label them so I know what I have. Once I have my points graphed, then I just connect my lines and I make my triangle. I have 3 sides, so I know that I have my triangle. I'm good to go. Now I can look at what we are going to for the next one. Horizontal distance of B from 0 to -4, or what is the distance from point of origin back to B? Well, the absolute value of -4 is 4. So positive or negative, whatever's inside the absolute value lines, I know I just make the answer a positive number. So my absolute value from point of origin to the -4 is 4. Going forward to C then, my absolute value from point of origin to 2 is 2. So when I put those together, I know that I have 4 plus 2 is 6. Or I can just simply count the units. And I know that from here to here, I have 6 boxes, so my units is 6. A little easier than trying to figure out what the absolute value of everything is. Now on these two, for 2 and 3, it says give the coordinates of the unknown vertex of the rectangle, and then it tells me I'm using the letters J, K, L, and M, and graph them. Now it's important to look at the directions, and we talk about directions all year. If I just try to jump ahead and go as fast as I can and I don't stop and look, then we might get a little confused. So we're going to look at why we're talking about it. If I just plot these two that we're talking about with the 3 points that we give, I can see that I have the rectangles and where they're going to be. But if I just skim them, or I didn't even read the directions, and in my head I was doing parallelograms, This shape here would be a parallelogram, and I could be finding a point over here. So it's important to find what I'm asking for, and I'm asking for a rectangle. Therefore, I know that I'm going to have right angles. So I make sure that I'm following the directions. So when I look for what I'm asked to find the coordinates and to graph it. So I've graphed these, and I went and added and included it as a rectangle because I know I'm finding a rectangle. Now I just need to find the missing letter and coordinates. So my coordinates, once again, are my x and then y. This one is in quadrant 1, so it's going to be positive and then positive. I'm going up here to this empty space. What letter am I missing? Well, it says I'm going to use J, K, L, and M, and here's J, K, L, so this one has to be missing the M. So I know I'm going to have it labeled as M, and then I'm going to have my coordinates. So if I'm missing M, what is M equal to? Well, I went forward 2 on my X, and then I jumped up to the 8 on my Y. So it's a positive, positive. So going forward, then going up, I'm going to put my X as 2, and I'm going to put my Y as 8. So my ordered pair for M is 2, 8. When I go to this one, and I look at what I have, I'm going to plot J, K, L, and M again, and I have a K, L, and M. So one of them, of the labels that you're going to get a point for, is making sure you have it labeled correctly. And in this situation, I'm looking for the J. So the J is what I'm trying to find on this one. And when I find it, this one is in coordinate 2, so I know it's a negative positive. So I'm going to go backwards, and then I'm going to go up. That'll tell me my ordered pair of my X and Y. So I'm going to go backwards to negative 2, and then I'm going to go up a positive 1. So J is equal to negative 2, positive 1 as an ordered pair. Ordered pairs, once again, to be written correctly and counted as a score, have to be inside of parentheses, have to be separated by that comma. So let's look at what we're asked to do here. On your own, for question 4, it says to give the coordinates of the unknown vertex, point of the V, so we're talking about points of the shape, of this rectangle, and it tells us we're finding PQRS, so PQR, so I know I'm missing S, and to graph it. So there's a lot of things I got to do there, but it should be pretty simple. So when I just draw the square, so I know that I'm going to go PQR, this has to be straight across from P, and has to be straight down from R, so I know that's where my missing letter is going to be. When I label it, I know I'm looking for S because it's the one that's not there. So I'm going to say that an S is equal to, and then I put my ordered pair. So I'm going forward 8 on my x-axis, jumping up 2 on my y-axis. So my ordered pair going forward and up is going to be positive 8, positive 2. So I did everything it asked. I've labeled it, I found the ordered pair, and I've graphed it. I get all 3 points. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go ahead and I'd like you to do 5 on your own, pause the video, and then restart once you've done it. So hopefully you've done it like I'm asking, and then you've restarted the video, and now we're going to work through what it's asking me to do. The vertices of a pentagon, and it gives me then 5 letters, P, Q, R, S, T, R, and then it tells me what the ordered pairs are. Graph the pentagon, find the length of side PQ. First, I'm going to do a review on the shapes that we did in the last lesson on what a pentagon is. When I graph it, I have to know what I'm talking about. So the ones that we looked at on a previous lesson were the prefixes. We had agons, so, but this is a triangle, it's not a triagon, right? Okay. But we have quadrilaterals, and then we went pentagon, hexagon, septagon, octagon, nanogon, and decagon. So knowing what these prefixes mean, it tells me how many sides I have. Triangles have 3 sides. Quads, like a quad runner has 4. A pentagon, penta means 5, and that's what I'm plotting. So now I'm going to put them in the correct locations, just step by step. I'm going to start with P, It tells me it's positive 9, positive 7. Once again, I'm in quadrant 1, so I don't have to worry about any negatives, but I have to remember to run forward and then jump. So when I run forward to the 9, which would be in between the 8 and the 10, and I jump up to the 7, which is going to be above the 6, below the 8, then I end up with a point there, and I label it P. My second one is 9, 3, so I run forward 9, jump up 3, put my point, and label it Q. My third one of the 5 tells me 3, 3. So I run forward 3, right in between the 2 and the 4, jump up 3, above the 2, below the 4, put my point or my vertex, and I label it R. My fourth one, positive 3, positive 7. So I'm going to run forward to the 3, jump up to the 7, put my point or my vertex, should be labeled S. Apologize for that. And then my last one is a T. There, I've changed it on that slide. My last one is a T, which is 6, 9. So I run forward 6, and I jump up 9, and I put my point. So now I'm just going to make it a pentagon, and all I do is I connect from point to point in the correct order. I know the correct order because we've known our ABCs since before we started kindergarten, most of us. So I go P, Q, R, S, T, and then take the last point, connect it back, and I end up with a pentagon. Now, maybe you're noticing something there. That looks more like a home plate, doesn't it? Compared to the pentagon that we had on the previous lesson. But what matters is that it says it's a pentagon. It has 5 sides, and this one has 5 sides. The difference between the two is in the previous lesson, we talked about regular polygons. And I just wanted to review the word regular. Regular means that all sides have equal lengths. So you'll notice there are green lines there to show they're all the same length. And all the angles with the pink arcs are the same size angle. This one is just a pentagon. It doesn't have to have the same size lengths, and it doesn't have to have the same size angles. So there's the difference between a regular pentagon and just a pentagon. We're working with just a pentagon. Then it says to find the length of the side for line segment, and this line above the letters means line segment, of PQ. So I find PQ, which is this far right side, and I'm going to measure. So when I count, my absolute value was 7, and my absolute value was 3, and I can subtract them like we did on the previous questions, and 7 minus 3 is 4, or you can do what I prefer. I just count my units from one point to another. There are 4 there. Either way, I know that my answer is 4. It's a math problem though, so I have to know that I have to have a label there. So I need to have units also. So I graphed it, I have my 4, and I have my label of units, so I would get all 3 points. So we're going to do a couple more. So when we look at this one on number 6, now it gives me a map, and it gives me some red lines, and some labels, and then some information that I have to follow. So I want to figure out what this map is showing me first. A city planner wants to locate a park where 2 new roads meet. So new roads means they are not on there. One of the new roads will go to the mall and be parallel to Lincoln Street, which is shown in red. The other new road will go to City Hall and be parallel to Elm Street, which is also shown in red. Give the coordinates for the location of the park. Now that sounds really complicated, but if we break it down, it's really not complicated at all. Let's just show what it's telling me to do. And then on where the new roads are going to be, I'm going to use dotted lines, and my dotted lines are in different colors, so they'll show up better. But you can just make a dotted line or with slash marks with your pencil, and it'll be just as easy. So when I look at what I'm told first that one of my new roads, and I'm going to make a dotted line in blue, is parallel to Lincoln Street, which is in red. So Lincoln Street I made a little thicker so you'd see which one we're talking about, but I know it's going to be parallel. Parallel, once again, means in whatever direction they're going, they will never cross. So I can't have one leaning, because then they would intersect. So I'm looking for things that go straight across from each other. So when I draw a line parallel from the mall and going parallel with Lincoln Street, so I go from the mall and I make it parallel with Lincoln Street so it never crosses, it would look something like that. Now, I'm not asking you to make measurements with a ruler or anything and make a perfect straight line, but just put it on there so you get an idea of where we're talking about, and we should end up with a pretty decent intersection. The next one then that we have is we're talking about another new road, and I'm going to do this one in a dotted green. It is going to go to City Hall and be parallel to Elm Street. So now you see that I've darkened this one and made it thicker in red, and I know it's going to touch City Hall and be parallel. This is on a y-axis going straight up and down, so the one that I'm going to draw in green is also going to go straight up and down on the y-axis. Then I know, and I go back to it, it's telling me that the park is going to be where those two new roads intersect. So I'm talking about that location right there. And I have to figure out what that location is. So when I look at it, when I go forward from my point of origin, which is in the center of the map, I'm then going up. So I'm going forward 1 and going up 1. So my coordinates for the new park are going to be 1, 1, as an ordered pair, parentheses separated by a comma. Then I go to question 7. It says each unit of the coordinate plane represents 2 miles. How far will the park be from City Hall? So I have to start at City Hall. From City Hall up to the new park, so I changed the color a little bit just so it would show up better. I know that I'm going to 1, 1. And City Hall is positive 1, negative 1, 2, 3. So I can do the absolute value, the distance between 0 and negative 3, the absolute value would be 3. The difference from 0 to 1, the absolute value would be 1. So when I add those together, because we're on opposite sides, 3 plus 1 is 4. Or we can do what I find a lot easier, just count the different units and add them together. So from City Hall, 1, 2, 3, 4, I know I have 4 units. Is that my answer? So hopefully you had the answer of no when I asked that question, if you're paying attention. I know that it's each of those units is 2 miles. So to find the actual distance, which is what it's asking, it's not asking how many units, it's asking what the distance is, then I know I have to take my 4 units that it is on my drawn map and I have to multiply it by 2 miles. Miles is going to be my label. And for every unit, I have 2 miles. So 4 times 2 tells me my answer is 8 miles. And that's our introduction to this lesson. And it should be pretty easy. We've done coordinate planes for quite some time now, since the 2nd month of school when I introduced them to you. Just always remember you're going to run either forward or backwards on your x-axis. Forward if it's positive, backwards if it's negative. Then you're going to jump up or down for the y-axis, which is my second one in my ordered pair. Jump up if it's positive, down if it's negative. Plot each of the things that it asks you to do. It's asking for a vertex. Once again, the point of a V tells me that I'm looking for the point of a shape. Don't make it difficult. This is really a pretty easy lesson. You should have some extra time to make corrections on previous assignments that I've given you to raise your grade in math. Or you can do an extra credit assignment and get some extra points added to your score to help raise it before we do report cards in 2 weeks. Go back through, make sure you understand it. If you filled out your book and you followed along and you still have some questions while you're working on it, come back and ask me for help.